All right, so you ready for this one?
Yeah, lay it on me.
Today's deep dive is going to take us into some pretty dark territory.
Yeah.
But it's a story that just grabs you, and it won't let go.
All right, I'm intrigued.
We're looking into the life of Anatoly Moskvin. A brilliant mind, but with a deeply unsettling secret.
Yeah, this case, it really throws a wrench into how we tend to put people in these neat little boxes. You hear respected scholar and you expect a certain type of person, but Moskvin just turns that on its head.
Yeah, he really does.
Yeah.
Moskvin was incredibly accomplished. This Russian academic, linguist, philologist, and a historian. He spoke 13 languages.
Wow.
But his real obsession, his area of expertise, was cemeteries. He actually called himself a necropolist, which basically means he was an expert in cemeteries and burial practices.
Yeah, a little creepy maybe, but definitely fascinating.
But in 2011, the police made a discovery in his apartment. And this went way beyond eccentric, straight into the realm of nightmare.
What happened?
They found the mummified bodies of 26 young girls, dressed up and posed like dolls all over his apartment.
Oh, wow, that's pretty shocking.
It's hard to even imagine, isn't it?
Yeah.
And what makes it even more bizarre is that Moskvin's parents lived with him.
Really?
And they apparently thought these mummified bodies were just large dolls.
So they had no idea.
So the question we're exploring today is how a man who was considered a genius by his colleagues could end up living with the mummified remains of young girls. What went so terribly wrong?
That's the question, isn't it? Well, one theory is that it all goes back to a traumatic incident in Moskvin's childhood. When he was just 11 years old, he was forced to kiss the face of a dead girl at a funeral.
Oh my God.
And experts speculate that this forced intimacy with death at such a young age could have had a profound impact on him growing up.
Wow, it's like something straight out of a horror movie.
Right.
But as a scholar, Moskvin wasn't some reclusive weirdo. He had a degree from Moscow State University. He wrote tons of books and papers. He was considered a leading expert in cultic history and linguistics. We're talking about a man who was, by all accounts, incredibly intelligent and successful.
And that's what makes this case so unsettling. It challenges our assumptions about who is capable of such horrific acts. Moskvin was living this double life, this respected academic who harbored this incredibly dark secret.
So let's dig a little deeper into this obsession with cemeteries. We know he traveled thousands of miles, visiting over 700 cemeteries. He even slept in cemeteries, sometimes even sleeping in coffins.
Yeah.
What do you think drew him to these places, to the dead?
Well, there's a theory that his extensive academic work, particularly his studies of ancient burial rituals and folklore surrounding death, may have fed into this obsession. It's possible that he was trying to experience these rituals firsthand to blur the lines between the living and the dead.
So he wasn't just interested in cemeteries from an academic standpoint. He was almost seeking some kind of personal connection with the dead.
That's one way to look at it, yeah. And this desire for connection, for understanding, may have taken a very dark turn.
Okay, so let's fast forward to that day in 2011 when the police went to his apartment. Can you walk us through what they found?
Sure, so picture this. Books piled everywhere, papers scattered around just a completely cluttered space.
Yeah.
And amidst all this chaos, the police discovered these dolls, these 26 mummified bodies of girls, ranging in age from 3 to 29. They were dressed up in colorful clothing, carefully posed on shelves, chairs, even on the sofa.
It's a scene that would make your blood run cold.
Yeah, absolutely.
And to think that his parents living right there with him had no idea what these dolls really were, it's almost too much to comprehend.
The police also found all kinds of other evidence that pointed to a disturbing level of planning and premeditation. There were detailed instructions on mummification maps of cemeteries with specific graves marked, and even photographs and videos of open graves and exhumed bodies. It was like he was meticulously documenting his macabre hobby.
It sounds like he was almost treating it like a scientific experiment, which is a terrifying thought. But why? Why go to all this trouble? What was he hoping to achieve?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? To get closer to the answer, we need to understand the complexities of Moskvin's psyche, particularly his diagnosis of paranoid schizophrenia.
So we're not just talking about a quirky academic with a morbid fascination with death, but potentially someone whose mental illness played a significant role in his actions.
Right. The question is, to what extent did his schizophrenia shape his motivations and his perception of reality? Was he fully aware of the gravity of his actions, or was he driven by delusions? One of the most disturbing aspects of this case is that Moskvin genuinely believed he could bring these dead children back to life.
Really?
Yeah, he had immersed himself in the occult and was convinced that he could find some ancient ritual, some combination of science and magic that would allow him to reverse death.
It's almost as if he was trying to play God to defy the natural order of life and death.
That's a good point, and it gets even creepier.
Oh no.
Moskvin claimed that he would sleep on the graves of these children to communicate with their spirits, seeking their permission, as he saw it, to exhume their bodies.
Oh god, that's just sending chills down my spine. I mean, was he really hearing voices? Or was that just a way to justify what he was doing?
It's impossible to say for sure, but it really highlights that blurry line between his deeply held beliefs, shaped by his mental illness, and his actions. But the truly horrifying part is what he did after he exhumed the bodies. He mummified them using a mixture of salt and baking soda, and then hid them in various cemeteries until they were fully preserved.
So he was treating these stolen bodies with a level of care and precision, almost like he was conducting some kind of twisted scientific experiment.
Exactly. Experts believe that Moskvin's academic knowledge of ancient burial practices, especially his research on mummification techniques, likely influenced his methods. But his goal wasn't just preservation. He wanted to create what he called dolls.
Wait, he dressed these mummified bodies up like dolls?
He did, yeah. He clothed them, gave them wigs, even made masks for their faces. Moskvin claimed that he was preparing them for their eventual resurrection, providing them with new, more appealing bodies to inhabit.
It's this strange mix of tenderness and absolute horror. He was caring for them in his own warped way, preparing them for this fantasy future. It makes you wonder, did he view these dolls as his own children?
That's a good question. You know, there's a theory that his intense desire for children, especially for a daughter, which is something he wrote about, extensively played a role in his actions. He had even attempted to adopt a girl at one point, but was rejected.
So a longing for a family twisted by mental illness and obsession, but it goes even deeper than that, doesn't it? His interactions with these dolls went far beyond simply dressing them up.
Absolutely. Moskvin would talk to them, sing to them, even celebrate their birthdays and holidays as if they were truly alive. He'd constructed this entire fantasy world where these mummified remains were his living, breathing family.
It's a truly chilling thought, the level of delusion at play here. But eventually, his secret world came crashing down right. The police uncovered his macabre collection, and he had to face the consequences of his actions.
Yeah.
What kind of legal repercussions did he face?
While Moskvin was charged with desecrating graves and dead bodies, a very serious crime in Russia. However, due to his diagnosis of paranoid schizophrenia, he was found unfit to stand trial.
So instead of prison, he was committed to a psychiatric institution.
That's right. He remains in a psychiatric facility to this day where he receives ongoing treatment and evaluation.
Does that mean there's a chance he could be released someday?
It's definitely a possibility. His doctors have actually petitioned for his release on several occasions, arguing that with continued treatment, he's no longer a threat to society. However, the courts have repeatedly denied these requests, acknowledging the severity of his crimes and the potential risk of relapse.
It's a tough situation, isn't it? On the one hand, you have someone struggling with severe mental illness who needs care and treatment. On the other, you have the horrific nature of his crimes and the understandable fear of him reoffending.
It highlights the ethical dilemmas surrounding cases like this. How do we balance compassion for those suffering from mental illness with the need to protect society? Where do we draw the line between criminal responsibility and mental incapacity? There are no easy answers.
It's a lot to wrap your head around, and honestly, even with all this information, I'm still left wondering, what was it really about these girls, these specific individuals, that drew Moskvin to them? Was it purely random, or is there something more, something we may never fully understand?
That's a question that has haunted investigators and experts from the beginning. Was there some pattern to his victims? Did they represent something specific to him? We know that he meticulously researched their lives, their families, their stories, but the exact nature of his fixation on them, well, that remains a mystery.
Yeah, it really is. It's like we're trying to solve a puzzle, but half the pieces are missing. We had these glimpses into Moskvin's mind, his writings, his actions, but there's this core element of his motivation that just remains frustratingly elusive.
Right, and that's what makes this case so captivating and so disturbing. It forces us to confront the limits of our understanding of human behavior, you know? We can analyze all this evidence, we can try to piece together a narrative, but ultimately we're left with this chilling realization that we may never fully comprehend what drove Anatoly Moskvin to do these things.
Yeah, it really underscores that even in this age of, advanced psychology and forensic science, there are still depths of the human psyche that remain uncharted territory.
I agree, and that brings us back to those broader questions this case raises about mental illness and criminal